Hello guys, today we are talking about the geometry progression. Okay, so let's move into the first part of it. Okay, so first let's understanding what is a geometry progression. So here you can find some notations of it. So also we can set A means a first term, like we can also using U1 to represent for it, but now we can set U1 equals to A. Okay, and also we have common ratio. We can say here because each adjacent terms they have the same ratios. Okay, so we can say maybe for U1, U2, U3, you can just consider like U1 to 4, 8, 16 to some other numbers. So you can find each term that it has to times 2 to become the next term, right? Okay, so you can also set here maybe A equals to U1. So times are the times 2. So here 2 means a ratio. So we can say here ratio equals to 2. Okay, that is how we can understand for here. So you can find here U1 can be considered as U1 equals to A, right? And also U2 can be considered as A times R, and U3 can be considered as A times R squared. So the nth term can be considered as A times R power of n minus 1, okay? That is how we can understand the nth term right here in the formula, okay? And also, let's just trying to understand what about the sum of the first n terms. So if you're trying to understand, like here, the sum is for Sn equals to the first term, right? And plus the second term AR plus the third term AR squared plus the fourth term AR cubed plus the last term is AR fourth, right? So you can add a sum, any other kind of sum. So you can then add the last term is AR power of a minus 1. Okay. So for this equation, you can just trying to times r on both sides. So here it turns into r times the sum of the first n terms into ar squared ar plus ar squared plus ar cubed plus ar power 4 plus ar power 5 plus until to a times r power of n, right? So then you can using the first term to minus n times the sum of the first n term, right? So it becomes 1 minus r as n equals to here a plus ar. So here you can find ar minus ar and it becomes 0, right? And ar squared minus ar squared becomes 0, right? And ar cubed minus ar cubed becomes 0. So you can find finally you can find there's only for ar power of n, right? So here we can say is equals to a minus ar power of n. So we can say Sn here equals to a times 1 minus r power of n over 1 minus r, okay? That is how we can understand the first nth term, okay? So please remember this equation and understanding how to use it. So here ratio means the common ratio, and a representing for the first term, and n representing for the nth term, right? Okay, so let's move into a working example together. Like here, if we have the sequences 2, 6, 18, 54, and find the seventh term and the first 8 terms and the sum of it, right? So U7 can be considered as U7 equals to AR power of 6, right? So every time remember that UN equals to A times R power of n minus 1, right? So we can say that the first term A is 2, right? Because we find here A equals to 2, right? And from 2 to 6, 6 to 18, we have to times 3. So we can say the ratio here equals to 3, right? So here ratio equals to 3. So the seventh term can be considered as 2 times 3 power of the 6, right? So you can calculate it as 2 times 3, I guess here is for 729, right? So we can set here, the final answer is for 1,458, okay? So that is the seventh term. And the first 8 sum together, we can set that it can be considered as S8, right? And we have already set the equation before that Sn is A times 1 minus R power of n over 1 minus R, right? So the first 8 term sum can be considered as here, first is A, right? So A is for 2, right? A is for 2, and then times 1 minus our ratio is 3, right? So it's 3 and here power of n, right? So here n equals to 8, right? And then over 1 minus r. So it's 1 minus 2, 1 minus 3, okay? The ratio is 3, right? So you can just calculate it. The final answer here is for 6,560, okay? That is the first 8-term sum, okay? So here is a student exercise for you. Here are 2 problems left, so you can just try yourself and pause the video and consider, okay? So if you want to follow with me, you can keep on going. So let's move to the first problem. Find the sum of the first 10 terms of 50, 45, 40. Okay, so you can find here is a arithmetic progression, right? You can find the first term is 50 and the common difference is minus 5, right? So you can just trying to consider here like the A equals to 50 and the common difference D equals to 95. So if you want to find the sum of the first 10 terms, you can just calculate as S equals to the first term plus the last term and over 2, right? And then times the number of terms. So it's times 10, right? So you can say here, A1 means the first term, that is 50, right? And A10 equals to A plus 10 minus 1D, right? So we can say that consider here is 50 plus 9 times 95, right? So the answer here is 50 plus 45 is for positive 5, right? So we can say here that is for positive 5. So it's 50 plus 5 over 2 times 10, right? So you can calculate the final answer like 55 over 2 times 10 is 55 times 5, right? So the final answer is 275. That is for the first 10th term sum. Okay. And the second problem is you find the sum of the first 10 terms of 4, 8, 16, right? So you can find here the first term is 4, right? So we can set A equals to 4. And then you can set the ratio here equals to 2, R equals to 2. So using the formula like S equals to the A times 1 minus R power of n over 1 minus R, right? So you can say that the first term is 4 and 1 minus 2, the power of 10, right? Over 1 minus 2, okay? That is how we can calculate this. So 2 the power of 10, the final answer is for 124, right? So you can just calculate it as a final answer that is for 4,000 and maybe for 4,000 and negative, oh sorry, let me try to calculate it. Okay, so here is for minus 4 plus 4 times 1,024. So you can calculate 4,096 minus 4, right? So the final answer is 4,092. Okay. So that is what is student exercise here. I hope you can understand how to calculate it and how to use the formula. Okay. So every time very important is to find the first term and the ratio or the common difference. They are very important. Okay. So that's for today's our lesson. Hope you can understanding for all of this. So see you next time. Bye.